Hey, my fellow multidimensionals, it's Aisha Love, founder of Multidimensional You, back in my happy place, Mount Bora, who was just under a huge squall and snowstorm, and I think is going to make a shining sunset reveal here pretty soon. So let's just see what goes on behind me as I film. Okay, in this final, maybe, we'll see, more questions might come in, but final fourth part Q&A from the original Activating the Healer Within first episode about the surprising reason you're hiding as a healer. I'm going to get into a little bit more of the esoteric stuff that you've been asking about, such as how do I activate past lives? What are light codes and codes I left for myself, and how do I get them? So I'll tell you a few stories and anecdotes along the way. Some of them are mine, some of them are my clients. Essentially, for many of us in a role of service as healer, way shower, pathfinder, wisdom keeper, light bringer, consciousness shifter, however you want to phrase it. Again, with a light touch, knowing we're still playing a role, and it's light touch. Keep some levity here. Don't get so attached to the role because it can be a trap, quite frankly. Meaning you can get stuck in one level of consciousness and think that that's the sum total, and forget that love is what we're here to be, remember, serve, offer, emanate, embody. And unconditional love is not judgy and hierarchical and othering. So light touch on the roles, but let's lean into the roles at the same time. Kind of an interesting paradox, right? So let me feel into the field. I'm going to come out of my cerebral mind and see what wants to make itself known. For many of you, this is not your first rodeo, so to speak. You've been here before in different forms. You might consider that since time is simultaneous, that is a concurrent existence. You can tap into that at any time. You don't need to go anywhere special per se on the planet. But I am being shown, like myself, many of you are called, have been called, will be called. For me, in 2014, that featured an undeniable impulse to travel to France. I thought I just missed going there because it had been a while since I'd been there. I finished high school in France. My parents lived in Normandy for 5 years. I had a lot of fond memories of being there on and off for years. But when it came down to it and I pulled the map out, there was a part of France that lit up like I just could feel it. And it was the far west of Brittany, France. I'd been to Brittany, but I hadn't been to Finistère, Land's End, Celtic France. Make a long story short, I answered the summons despite my own doubt, despite not wanting to necessarily spend the money, yada, 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 right? And I ended up on a sacred mountaintop with a full-blown past life spontaneous remission in real time. Many of you have heard the story, but we have a lot of new folks on the channel, so it's worth repeating. There alone on that top of that sacred mountain, I was myself as this woman, human here, but I was also overlaid having an experience of being a Celtic priest some 6,000 years before, addressing a large crowd. The energy became so intense, I actually couldn't stand, so I kind of fell to my knees in the heather and gorse, and then it all just faded away. It wasn't a vision. It was a full-blown, like, I was him, I was there, I was doing that. It was pretty trippy. And then I wobbled down off the mountain, drove home, back to the rental, flew home to Idaho. Back here I am in Idaho again. I was living in Boise and I started hiking and realized that a whole bunch of shamanic abilities had turned back on. So I know many of you have had similar experiences in terms of past life, whether you did a regression and got information, however you did it, right? And share those stories below. It's fascinating. As recently as November, I was in France again, and I had answered the summons to go to France in the middle of the night, 3 a.m. in Yellowstone. They told me, buy the tickets now. And I was like, whoa, okay. Wasn't really sure what I was doing, but, I know better than to quibble with my inner guidance. And in the similar spot, similar trajectory, similar sacred sites, big megalithic dolmens, the big, stones, helped, witnessed, was part of another person's overlaid experience of very similar, different lifetimes. In this case, for him, it was 2. But watching him go through what he went through and then thinking about it later and reflecting upon it, and then other people I've taken there on vision quests, other clients, I realized that my own past life, spontaneous past life regression, that it wasn't even regression, just like experience, not only gave me like kind of a reactivation of abilities that I had in that lifetime that I clearly developed and the culture had developed in a way that modern society does not develop shamanic abilities. It was also my preparation to really step into role of spiritual teacher in this lifetime in a way that I was not prepared, except to the extent that, you know, I gave myself intellect and poise and the ability to speak. I'm nearly 6 feet tall, like presence, all of that. Nobody said, hey, you're going to be a spiritual teacher and here's how we prepare you, like far from it, right? And then you couple that with the challenge in this lifetime, which is to overcome hiding. And I'm being told to bring that up very specifically because many of you have that as well. That's kind of what this whole series is about, is encouraging all of us to step more into the light, step more out as the light, as the love. I'm trying to think, so other people have had some pretty profound experiences at other sacred sites in that region of the world that I'm being guided to take people to. I am being called big time to invite people to Jackson, Wyoming. I went through a whole series of 6 weeks straight of nonstop field work in the region, most of it centered there with very large multidimensional structures being activated. So yeah, oh, did you feel that? Some of you will have just felt that in your chest, like went woof, right? Okay, if you felt that, that's your energetic summons right there. Whether you do it solo on your own or you want to work with me to help you do it, or me and my complement, Jonathan, however you want to put this together, there's a real softening there and a real emotional energy. I don't know who that's for, but it really feels like, yeah, some of you are very emotional right now. Like this is a big calling card for you. So whether you're having that in response to, Jackson, maybe it's Bora that's calling you here in Idaho, Mount Bora. It's the tallest mountain, tallest peak here, or wherever that is on the planet for you. Trust the emotion, trust the energetic expansion in your heart center. It's undeniable. When I have that kind of emotion, that is truth. So essentially, as our greater multidimensional self would have animated or is currently animating, since time isn't really linear in the way we think it is, an existence, let's say 2,000 years ago, as an Essene, many of you have that in your files, you would have left light codes and files in different places for you to work with and pick up in this lifetime. I kind of think of them as like time capsules, multidimensional time capsules. So I know many of you have been curious about that. Don't overthink it. Don't, reach for it too much. You will guide yourself. The biggest thing I've seen with myself and many people I've worked with is you can get in your own way. You can delay and you can give, you can not listen to your inner guidance. You can give your power away to other people to influence you, saying, don't spend that money, don't go there alone, et cetera, et cetera. You're crazy, you're listening to weird voices, whatever, So in some ways it's good to keep your inner guidance close to your chest. Share it with only people who really truly support you and see you and are grateful for you. And any sort of attempt to get validation outside of yourself from people who are not really keen to give it is probably an invitation for you to look in the mirror at your own shadow of why you would be seeking that approval outside of yourself, and to, as we talk about so often here, to inner source it for yourselves. I'm also being shown many of you are in position exactly where you're supposed to be. And it might seem really quiet. It's really quiet here. I love it. That's why I come up here. It's a reflection of my 0 point state that I often get to. Oh, the wind just came up from behind me. Hello. Who's saying hello? That was a beautiful hello from our interdimensional friends and elementals. Gorgeous. It just snowed here. Interestingly, as I share all of this and encourage all of you, I'm being told that every time I come up here and follow the inner summons to come up here, which it always makes me feel so good to come up to Mount Bora. There's never anybody up here, especially this time of year, that it's continuing to activate more and more. And that I'm being called into greater service and greater spotlight and greater light emanation, and that this is serving that purpose. It's not just a pretty view. I will also give you this encouragement because I realize it can be a little bit daunting to say, I'm just going to do that. And people are going to be like, what are you doing that for? But again, you got to negotiate Giving your power away to other people. Why do other people even need to know? I mean, I get it, unless they share your finances. And then that's a whole nother thing that at some point we can get into. I had to deconstruct my whole life, my marriage, all of that, right? Because we're just not at all on the same life trajectory. And that's okay. In fact, a lot of it's part of you setting that up in the first place to really strengthen yourself and your resolve for your life path. So here's the encouragement I want to give you is that when I look back and I answered the summons and I just went, it all kind of took on a life of its own and went into places, divine appointments, collaborations I could never have foreseen without just taking the next step and then the next and then the next. So the next step is what unlocks the rest. If you try to jump ahead and think, I need to know 3 steps ahead, it just doesn't work like that, because quite literally, like the pathway corridor you open through trust and surrender and following the inner directive is what opens the rest. They're not open yet until you in faith, because we set it up to walk mostly in blind faith here. Yay! And let's make it extra challenging, right? And then the rest will unfold. And a lot of it has to do with deconstructing ways you may have learned how to self-defend, self-protect, and shield. No problem, right? As the sun starts to go behind the hill, I love you all so much. Thank you for being here with me. You've got this. You already planned it. You just try to enjoy walking it. My dad has always reminded me of that. He's like, hey, you in there. A little more joy. All right? And I'll be doing that alongside all of you, because I can fall into the like over serious overthinking traps too. All right. I love you all so, so much. The coyotes are on the other side of the valley today. Of course they had to be in the video. My mountain. Shrimpy. Shrimpy, it smells good out here. It's a pack of dogs. Corn dogs? Coyote dogs. All right, that's my cue.